Hey everybody, welcome to Each News. We've got Kristen Costagliola, and she's a CTO of Syncro MSP, and we're going to talk about what she's doing over there. Of course, now we're building this family at Syncro that we've been talking to kind of paint the big picture of what this amazing team is doing over there for MSPs. Kristen, first of all, welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me, Julian. It's great to be here.
It's total pleasure for me. So let's just dig into this. What do you do there, first of all? Let's start there.
Well, I have a pretty broad remit at Syncro. I get to run our full engineering team, so I own all of the delivery within the product suite. I work very closely with Dee Zeff, our Chief Product Officer, on all of the delivery of the amazing features, improvements, and everything that you might see from the platform. And I also manage kind of the back end infrastructure as well that runs the performance, reliability. I also do our own internal IT and security. And so and we use Syncro for our own internal IT. So I have a pretty good use case and experience with kind of leveraging our own product to managing the security and improvements of our own company. And then I also have our technical support team rolls up through me. So all of the kind of partner facing and every bit of improvement that we can do there. So on the engineering and tech support side, we really work to kind of solve any of the problems that come in that people might bring to us, and also kind of making their lives easier.
Chris, it's kind of cool when you practice what you preach, you know. What's the saying? You eat your own dog food type thing. I don't know if that's an appropriate statement, but you're using it, and so every day you understand, what it is. Just just out of the gate, what are some of the things or a thing that you've noticed as a user of it that maybe you've said, hey, you know what, we need to fix this, or you've been able to help improve?
Yeah, I think a couple of the things have stood out, and some of the features that we've been working on over the past 6 months have really made improvements. So especially around like our Windows patching dashboard, we use Syncro for our SOC 2, and we're SOC 2 compliant. So all of the pieces that we have to keep up to date of all of the devices that we have, making sure that the patches are available, the patching dashboard really helps with that. It helps with reporting, which I think before we had that it's kind of challenging to really be able to say like, yes, 100% all of the endpoints are up to date, and I don't have these pockets of problems kind of within my devices, or we have things that we can actually tackle and handle. So that's been a big area, I think, that's been kind of an improvement overall. And then the Microsoft stuff has been awesome for us. I will fully admit, like I am not a Microsoft expert in all of the configuration of how you should manage your Microsoft environment and your tenant. And I'm lucky I only have one tenant to manage, myself personally, whereas MSPs have, hundreds and the things that Microsoft introduces and the changes and keeping up with everything is quite a challenge, without having a team like 100% dedicated to it. So a lot of those improvements have been really welcomed by me as well.
Well, I was going to say, who can stay on top of what's happening at Microsoft, right? Let alone
It's
for all your
tough.
clients.
Yeah,
It's
it's tough. And seeing what's
mm,
going on in all of your
mm,
client environments, it's just there's no visibility today, which makes it really challenging.
absolutely. So let's talk about this. This double click on this thing called, configuration drift. I mean, obviously, you set something up originally, which is kind of cool. Set and forget it is what we all love to hear. But that doesn't really work anymore, right? So talk a bit about the basics around that, and then we can, go into a bit of a deeper conversation.
Of course. I think we all would love something that you set and forget and kind of just set it up once and then you never have to come back to it again.
Mm,
And that works great if you're the only person ever accessing that software or that endpoint or that Microsoft tenant,
mm,
overall solution. The fact is that there are multiple people that have rights and abilities, and for an MSP, your end customer is the one that really owns the tenant. And
mm,
so people have the opportunity to go in and make changes. And with configuration drift, you might not know that things are happening underneath this, like behind the scenes in these environments that you're
mm,
supporting. Years and years ago, we used to always tend, one of the reasons RMMs were created in the first place was that people could go into the file server and update things, or people could go into AD because they were on-prem and there was, people on site who had access to those systems.
Mm.
And so RMMs were created really to manage configuration drift of the endpoint. And I think now we're in a new world where configuration drift extends far beyond just pieces of hardware or endpoints that are sitting in physical locations. It's now all of these SaaS solutions that, as MSPs and as just IT professionals in general, we have to support, we have to maintain. And there's updates that are happening to them all the time with new improvements and new security features. And so even just setting something up the first time, there might be a new feature that comes out, especially with AI and with all the things changing, you have to make sure that your data is secure. And so uh, configuration drift is just, it's something that naturally happens over time with any sort of software solution. Uh,
Mm.
and if you don't have visibility,
Can't
it's
do it.
really hard for you to take action.
We all hear a lot about patch management, right? I mean, literally, software is being updated every day. It seems like every 10 seconds I have a software update happening in my world. And it's all stuff that's happening, right? I mean, they're adding functions, but also they're patching security issues. And sometimes, they figured out a security breach, so there's a massive demand to update that quickly, and so it's a bit of a challenge. Um, First of all, let's talk a bit about patch management, because that's I think mission critical to keeping everybody secure. And then how do you guys help them? How do you help these MSPs to kind of like save the day and manage the crazy patch management cycles?
Yeah, I think patch management is something that, as an MSP, that's table stakes. Like
Mm,
everyone should be doing it. I mean, even just personal machines. You're right. I think patches come out all the time. Microsoft's always updating things, and
mm,
the truth is that there are things identified all the time. These are big software systems, and there are vulnerabilities, but just improvements that need to happen kind of across the board in all of these different areas. And so, patch management really, what we do at Syncro is we allow you to set up your policy to manage whatever endpoints you want and specify what patches you want to make sure are installed. And then we have our new patching dashboard, like I talked about at the beginning,
mm,
that tells you whether you're compliant or where you have some areas of improvement and where you need to take action. And that's the biggest thing, is surfacing some of these pieces that you just don't have visibility into. As an MSP, and just again, as an IT professional, you have to know there are going to be things that are going to get out of compliance. That
mm,
just happens. There are things that change. I am one of the worst I hate rebooting my machine. I hate it. I know, because then I have to bring everything back up that I have set up. And I'm positive that people have, users like me that exist out there. Uh, and it's important for you to know that, hey, wow, this machine's really out of date because they haven't rebooted, or they turned off their machine at the end of the day and they turn it off so it's not receiving any updates. And those are things that if you don't have visibility, you can't take action. And so patch management is about, one, automating all of the things that you possibly can and installing the patches in the background so that it doesn't impact your users as much as possible. But then two, paying attention to those people that maybe get out of compliance, and being able to reach out to them and say, hey,
mm.
you, Kristen, you really got to reboot your machine because you haven't in a while. And that's, again, I'm one of the bad people here. I know that. So I know that about myself. I make it a priority to do to reboot when I can.
Gonna have the system start writing, tickets like cops, like parking and traffic tickets. You now have a ticket for unpatching, and here's $50. I mean, maybe one day we'll come to this, Kristen. Who knows?
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting though. I think that the time of the endpoint is reducing.
mm,
There always will be physical machines, but when I look at our physical machines and when I talk to, a lot of end users, there's of course will be servers that sit on-prem, and those are going to continue to exist, I think, for a
mm,
long time. But the life of the endpoint is actually changing, I think, a lot. When you think about your machine, or you think about machines in like your company and what people are using, so much of that today is in the cloud. It's just a piece of hardware that you can kind of swap out at the
mm.
end of the day. You know, uh, again, like almost everything that I'm doing on my machine is already stored in the cloud, and I can
Mm.
retrieve all those documents there. So the world is shifting in that manner of, yes, it's critically important. We always should make sure we're up to date there, but attacks are coming less directly to the endpoints and to the physical machines, and they're starting in all of these other areas, specifically on the identity and cloud side. And that's where we kind of have to shift and turn our attention to, which is, I think, where everything is going.
Yeah, it's almost like the device is like the client now, and it's like dumb, and you could walk it, throw away, get another one, and then boom, all your stuff is in the virtual world out there. Which, I don't know if that's better or more complicated, because if the hackers can get in there, it affects everybody, not just a user. Whereas maybe a user screws up, maybe that dampens the or white lessens the actual footprint. Um, but let's talk a bit about those rogue players. Obviously when people get out of compliance issues, or they're adding something that maybe no one is aware about. They maybe bought the new computer system, maybe they added a new software, all that crazy stuff that they users normally do. How does your system help MSPs kind of like quarterback all that?
Yeah, so we have network discovery. So for machines on the endpoint, let's say you bring someone new brings a machine in, they
Mhm.
brought their own computer that they decided they really need. They need this specific model. So we have network discovery set up within our system, so you can scan the entire network and see and get alerted on any new devices that might pop up in the network, so that you can take action on them. And you can see any of the activity there of kind of what's happening to make sure that maybe someone's brought their own device one day, or then it dropped off, and you spoke to them, or maybe something's just happening in the background. I think there's a lot of things, and these are the clients that we're talking about. A lot of them, it's that they don't really know, right? There might be a
Mhm.
machine. They're not being malicious. I don't think people are coming on. Although, like, we know that there are bad actors out there that may do things like that. A lot of these rogue machines are someone who is either well-meaning and again has a specific need for something, or there's something that everyone forgot about. There's some
Mhm.
machine that's sitting in a closet somewhere that everyone forgot is running, and running, some either potentially something critical, or is just an open network flaw there of outside access. And so our network discovery is a big tool for kind of managing a lot of those things, a lot of the rogue machines that come onto the network.
Yeah, and also apps. I mean, there's as a user, right? Users are sort of like free as a bird. They can do everything they want, or so they think. And
They
whatever they
like,
do impacts the entire organization, right? I mean, just sharing your computer with your kids because they need something to be done is a bad issue. And we could go on and on, but there's these anomalies, these weird things that in itself, over a small period of time, may not impact net results, but if it becomes a habit, could be a challenge, right? So obviously your system sort of identifies that, and you have to have that convo with with
yeah.
that person, right?
You can track all of the installed applications. You can make sure that specific applications are updated. You can kind of make sure across the board that people aren't doing, and then you can get alerts. You get alerts on things of activity that might be happening on the actual endpoints themselves. For again, a bunch of us, they're not being malicious. They're trying to help their kid
Yeah.
get their homework done, or they're trying to solve some problem, and maybe they downloaded something, or how well-being that meant they fell for a phishing scheme and downloaded some malicious software. Uh, so Syncro helps you track all of that and make sure that you can respond to those quickly.
If you let your computer assume they're going to do all the above, you know, especially kids. What is that? Why can't we click on? Anyways, I digress. One of my favorite topics, Kristen, is death by 1,000 tools. We've got all these tools, all these dashboards, and quite honestly, I've had the privilege, I should put in quotes, of seeing dashboards by these tech people and all those things they have to manage, and I scratch my head and I go, wow, what is that doing for your mental stress and the amount of work you've got to do in flipping from one to the other? It just seems to me a lot of things and a lot of repeat and rinse and repeat and over, et cetera, et cetera. How is like the problem of tool sprawl and integration? How is that helping the human, by the way, first of all? And what is it doing to bring the technology sort of together in sort of a well structured, integrated way?
Yeah, I think tool sprawl is one of the biggest issues today,
Yep.
especially for MSPs, but honestly for anyone that's using things. There's these tools that come out for like one very specific purpose, and you feel like you have to buy it for that item. And I think, a lot of products in the space and in general, they want to specialize and have something that's really, really deep in one area. And that's great, but for technicians who have to do a huge number of things, jumping between all these different tools and having to manage them in all these different places means that you have more likely that you're going to miss something. And just like you said, like the human aspect of it is tough. Like that makes it challenging for all of us to remember, oh, did I check this other system today, or did I check this one thing that I needed to do? It becomes challenging. So at Syncro, one of the reasons that I joined and that I love Syncro is that our goal, our direction is really to try to simplify things for the MSP and make them more efficient. So as we look at our tool stack, as we look at our integration, as we look at our product, we're always asking ourselves, does this add complexity for the MSP or does this reduce the complexity for them? And so our big plan with the Microsoft management is that we feel this should be built into every single RMM that
Mm.
exists today. We think that this is a capability that just should exist in the entire platform. Just like we moved from EDR to MDR to then XDR of like getting a view of the whole network, just the endpoint is not sufficient. We feel the same way about RMM. Getting view of just your endpoints isn't a full sufficient picture. You need to have a view of your SaaS tools, of your Microsoft environment as well to be able to take action on that. And so,
Mm.
and that just increases efficiency for the technicians. They don't have to jump, they don't have to learn all of these different tool suites. I think years ago in the MSP space, the single pane of glass, I think,
Mm.
was like really overused feature. And our goal is not to make one single pane of glass, right? Like you need different views into and different actions and different things you need to take, but it needs to be in the same format and UX that you're familiar with. And you don't have to jump into all these different systems is the goal on the Syncro side, just to simplify that for the technician. And then for the overall MSP, provide efficiency and ideally increased profitability because we all know that tools tools are a big component of what MSPs
Costs
have
us
to
a
pay
lot.
for their costs. Yeah. You have your costs of humans, which is the critical cost because that's the service that you provide. That's the benefit that you're really bringing as the MSP. And then the tools should be there to support you and should also provide you that gain of profitability.
Absolutely, it's the single pane of glass. I mean, I think if you actually had to pull it all together on one screen, it would be like 100 feet by 100 feet of a screen. I'm not quite sure how you could fit it into an actual regular human sized screen, but there's only so much a human can watch, on a screen before I have too much. And so you've got to sort of condense this in layers. Like here's the main things you got to keep watching, and then you see something you can get into that and see a little bit deeper. It's got to be something like this. So kind of it's sort of almost obvious, and you wonder why not until now you guys are doing this stuff. It makes a lot of sense, and I don't know if anybody would do the numbers on this, but can you imagine if we can actually remove that complexity and how much time the entire community would save if you had to put a number of hours? I mean, I'd hate to kind of calculate it, but I think you would be thinking in terms of like decades, like years collective time, right? That we'd be saving. I don't know.
Yeah, we've seen from a bunch of our customers, we've seen some really big improvements. And it's not just like a dashboard, right? There's calling attention to the things that you need. So getting the proper alerts and then having the proper automation that can actually fix those alerts for you
Yep.
so your technicians don't have to pay attention, but they are alerted on the most important things. And it flows directly into your ticketing workflow. So you can access and kind of pay attention. And so we've seen with a couple of our customers like, close to a 40% improvement in their uh, ticket response time with some of the improvements that we've made as we've partnered and kind of continued to add on automations and improve. And so, that's our goal, is to continue to increase that time so that the technicians can spend their time on the stuff that's the most important, which is
Mhm.
really servicing the customers and being that really great face and voice for you as the MSP.
Well, if you could just save an hour and a half or so per day, it's like a full human body per week, and not just the cost savings, but also I just like to think of the human stress, mental stress savings. At some point, it's a human that's doing that work day in, day out, right? And if they've got to go through, that process every day, at some point, it's like, man, that's a little bit much. And what happens? They get tired and they make mistakes, right? So it's in everybody's best interest to kind of do this, and I think AI in your field is actually helping to mediate this problem, so we can kind of solve things, in real time, for these folks that maybe they would finally discover, but it would take them a lot longer, right?
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's making it easier to find that information, and then again making the technicians and giving them time to focus on the important thing. Because, to your point of saving an hour and a half, when you're doing a million tasks,
Yeah.
you're not putting tremendous care into every single interaction, right? You're just quickly checking off the items on the list because you have a backlog of a ton of other things that you have to get to. And so freeing up that is, it's not about, reducing people on staff. It's about allowing them to spend that extra time with the customer, to go through some of the details, to maybe do a QBR, which maybe you haven't had the ability to do in the past. Maybe it's to, provide that service for the reason that those customers would choose you as their IT provider. It opens up your opportunities to kind of spend that time that, like you said, would be stress and, you know, potential for mistakes and a lot of pieces with giving them the time back to do more with it.
I would love some MSPs to go ask their technicians, can you do a QBR with some of the clients? And I could see them doing something like this, right? It's like, it's I'll leave it there. In my talks with these folks, they're just tapped out, busy. And for me, the best way one has described it to me was, I'm on a treadmill, and and it's not a 2 kilometers, two miles per hour. It's like at 50 miles per hour, and it goes to 60 miles per hour, and then 90 miles per hour. It just keeps going. It's just never, slow and paced. And that's what they feel like. I don't know how true it is, but I guess it's a
That's
challenge.
true. It's true for a bunch of the MSPs that I talk to too. They don't feel like they have the time to even invest in their business, which I think is the challenging piece, is that they feel like they're constantly, on the treadmill or trying to keep up and never have the time to say like, okay, how can we automate some of these things? How can we improve some of this? And so that's some of the areas that we're trying to help with, is to make that easier, so that
Mm,
you don't have to, there's things, hey, your technicians now can just click a button directly in Syncro and manage that,
yeah.
rather than having to go to a different portal or to look up, remember how you reset MFA or how you, take certain actions in Microsoft. And then you can get alerted when your end customer, well-being as they meant to be, turned off MFA for the entire tenant because they wanted to test out an integration that they couldn't get working. And one of the first things that AI told them maybe to try was to disable MFA. And so they said, okay, I'll try that myself.
Yeah. Why
And
renable it?
then forgot to re-enable it because it worked, or something took place. And so now you have that opportunity to view those things as well.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It was that while I was having a conversation with the person at treadmills, another person. Well, imagine, Julian. You're running on a treadmill at 30 miles per hour, but I'm drinking a hot coffee in my hand at the same time. That's me. I'm running on the
Oh,
treadmill. Anyways,
love
you can go on with that analogy forever, but it's a really cool one. Um, so, Chris, I'm going to have you put on your future hat, your crystal ball hat, and where are we headed? What's going on?
Yeah, I think I said I think over time the endpoint is going to become less important, and I think that is the case. And I think cloud environments are going to be more complex. I also think that, and you've seen this already with some of the AI tools, is that AI is so beneficial and there's so much power that I think we're going to be able to leverage in those. And I think there are security and areas of focus that we need to continue to figure out how best to leverage those tools and those SaaS products. There was some big security exploits that kind of came out and have been shown in the last week
Mm,
on some of the major AI tools of what are the things that people are using to build. And so there's going to be, I think, a lot of we're gonna navigate how to figure out this new world that we live in with AI, how it will benefit us, and how we can leverage it to do a number of things, while also keeping ourselves and our clients secure. So, and the cloud environments are just going to become more complex because attackers and bad actors have access to all of the same tools that we do, right? They have access to all of the AI to make things look exactly like it's coming from you, or to, generate an image of a person and make it look like it's a person that's actually talking to you, or use voice recordings. Like there's so much out there today that gives malicious actors access to things. And so cloud security, identity security is going to be paramount to everything that MSPs are doing. You have to make sure that you're managing that side and that you're understanding the complexity that exists in all of these systems. And as much as we love, as much as Microsoft is the reason that a lot of MSPs are in business and a lot of pieces, Microsoft complexity is just going to continue to grow. And managing that is a challenge for everyone. And so I think that's going to be a big area of kind of like
mm.
figuring out how to leverage these two tools, and making sure that you're not just adding taxing onto your technicians and making the people labor more.
And Chris, I think you'd agree this is just early days. I mean, we
Yeah.
haven't really geared up yet. We're still in the kindergarten phase of AI. And I don't know what's going to come, but I could tell you it's not going to be, exactly what you think it is. And you got to be prepared for what it's not going to be or what you think it may not be, right?
Read, and I think you have to be flexible and keep learning. I think, and a lot of people have equated it to this, and so I don't disagree. It's like the internet when the internet came out. Like when the internet first came out, right? It wasn't you like you said, it's in the kindergarten phase. That's kind of what the internet was when it first came out. Everyone, the dot-com era, like, okay, we're gonna have a web team, or we're gonna like we have this thing. I think AI is gonna integrate itself very similar to how the internet has in our day. You couldn't do anything without the internet. We lose internet at my house. It's like, what do we do? Like, what are we spending our time doing? It's almost as bad as when the power goes out, right? It's like you don't really know what you can do. And so I think that that's where AI is going to end up being. And you kind of have to navigate and be flexible and learn as much as possible about what's changing every day, because it's changing every single day. And it's exciting. It's exciting. It's scary. It's fun. There's so much out there that I think is just really going to make big differences for people, in a lot of positive ways, and we have to figure out the ways to harness that in the best way possible for the business and for the people.
Absolutely. And I just want to add that unlike the internet, it's going to happen so much faster that we don't have time to adjust. I mean, going from, slow speeds to fast speeds, we had some time to
Yeah.
digest. And it just seems like every week there's like, what? It's just advanced so quickly. So hold on to your to whatever you've got and get ready for the ride. You need to give us some advice now, Kristen. Like you got MSPs out there listening to this and they're going, yeah, I agree with you, Kristen. I got to get my act together with all this configuration stuff and this rogue stuff, and this is going to help me save time. So you got them there. You had them at hello. And now, what advice would you give these MSPs out there? Because you know what's going on, you know their business model, you know how they're struggling with margins maybe, and all the configuration issues. What's the best advice you can give to MSPs today?
I think you have to slow down to speed up in some areas. And so I think that is
Mm,
you have to take the time to look at your tool stack, to look at your automations, to look at your processes even and say, what is working for us and what isn't working for us? Where is our time being spent? And are there ways to automate those things? And because today there's so many more automation capabilities that than existed before. And so I think you really have to look at your business, and it's hard. It's so hard when you're running on that treadmill at 60 miles an hour with a hot cup of coffee. It can feel like I can't take the day to really evaluate, or week, or whatever it's going to take to really evaluate my business. But it's actually incredibly important to try to like really figure out your processes as a company. And so it's hard. I trust me, I feel the same way. I have similar, I feel similar a lot of times of like, wow, I don't know that I have any time to stop and really evaluate what do we need to improve, or what are the pieces. And sometimes you might not know the answer. And that's where I think we are so lucky in the MSP community that there are so many people that are willing to help others and want to share best practices, want to share what's worked for them. There's people sharing AI workflows, there's people sharing scripts, there's people sharing all these number of things that can help you. And so yeah, that would be my biggest piece of advice, is that sometimes you have to slow down so that you can get back on that treadmill, and speed up again,
mm.
and hopefully
Wise
run at a
words.
manageable pace. Hopefully.
Yeah, wise words, Karen. It's almost like, on a treadmill, 30 miles per hour with a coffee, a sandwich, and your phone texting. I mean, at some point, you can only do so much, right? And you do need to slow that thing down. And yes, it might mean a little bit of short-term challenges. But if you can find a better way, then you can kind of manage this thing. And I think it's just not just managing technology, but I think also managing their lives a little bit better. Because at some point, if we burn all the humans out, then what are we going to do? Just
Exactly.
have my AI talk to your AI.
Yeah, you can't, the saying you can't pour from an empty cup, like is so true, is so
Yeah,
true. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to have anything to give your clients, which is really the reason that you're in business, the reason that you're doing what you're doing. So
absolutely. Slow down to speed up, my friends. Again, the website address is syncromsp.com.
yeah, syncromsp.com.
There you go. I just I want to leave
You're
it
right.
there.
You're
Good
right.
stuff.